Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to start with the perception of space, depth, and distance. Now, whatever we visualize or whatever we see around us, where the things exist, they move or they can be placed, is known as space. The space in which we live is organized in 3 dimensions. We not only perceive the spatial attributes of various objects, but we are also able to perceive the distance between the objects found in the space. While the images of the objects projected onto our retina are flat and 2-dimensional, we still perceive 3 dimensions in the space. Why does it happen? This happens basically because we are able to transfer a 2-dimensional retinal image into a 3-dimensional perception. The process of viewing the world in 3 dimensions is known as distance or depth perception. In perceiving depth, we depend upon 2 main sources of information called cues. One is called the binocular cue, and the other is known as the monocular cue. Monocular cue is because they allow us to perceive the depth with just one eye, and the name binocular cues is given because they require both the eyes. So I'll be taking up the cues one by one. First, I'll be starting with monocular cues. As I just said, that monocular cue is effective when the objects are viewed with one eye only. These cues are often used by artists to induce the depth in 2-dimensional paintings, and that is why they're also called pictorial cues. Let's come to some of the major monocular cues, which are also known as psychological cues. The first monocular cue is relative size. The size of the retinal image allows us to judge the distance based on the present and past experience with similar objects. As the objects get away, the retinal image becomes smaller and smaller. We tend to perceive an object farther away when it appears small and closer when it appears to be bigger, as it happens when we are moving in a train. The second cue is interposition or overlapping. When one portion of the object is covered by another object, the overlapped object is considered to be farther away, whereas the object that covers it appears to be nearer. Next is linear perspective. This reflects a phenomena by which distant objects appear to be closer together than the nearer objects. For example, when you are walking or when you are moving by car on the road, you can see the trees at both the sides of the road, and you can find that these trees, they are converging at a vanishing point at the horizon. Similarly, it happens with the railway tracks, as you can see in this particular slide. The railway tracks, they seem to converge at a vanishing point with increasing distance. The more the lines converge, the farther away they appear. Next we come to is aerial perspective or relative clarity. The air contains dust and moisture that makes the distant objects look hazy or blurry. This effect is called aerial perspective. For example, the mountains may appear to be blue due to the scattering of blue light in the atmosphere, whereas the same mountains are perceived to be closer when the atmosphere is clear. Light and shade. In the light, some parts of the object get highlighted because nearby objects reflect more light into our eyes, so that is why they are highlighted. And some parts which are away, they appear to be darker. Highlights and shadows provide us information about the distance of the object. So the brain is able to assume the light, given the 2 identical objects, the dimmer one, that means the one which is having less amount of light, appears to be farther away. Next we come to is relative height. The larger objects are perceived as being closer to the viewer, and the smaller objects are being far away. When we view any big monument and when we see an office complex in front of it, you will find that the monument appears to be much more closer to you as compared to the office complex, whose height is relatively lesser than that of the monument. The next is texture gradient. Texture gradient is another cue where a phenomena is represented by which the visual field having more density of elements appears to be farther away. This happens when you are maybe standing against a very big wall. You will find that as you view the wall from a distance, the density of the stones increases. The last monocular cue is motion parallax, which is a kinetic monocular cue and was never considered as a pictorial cue, unlike the other cues that we have studied. It occurs when the objects at different distances move at different relative speed. The distant objects appear to move slowly than the objects which are close. The rate of the object's movement provides a cue to its distance. For example, when we are moving by train, the train which is on the closer railway track next to us appears to move against the direction of our train, whereas a train which may be a little on a farther away railway track happens to move with the direction of the bus. That is why it is called motion parallax. After completing the monocular cues, I'll come to binocular cues, which are called the physiological cues. Binocular depth cues are clues about the distance based on the differing views of two eyes. Now, let us come to the cues one by one. The first one is retinal or binocular disparity. It states that the two eyes in our heads, they are separated, on our face rather, they are separated at a distance of about 6.5 centimeters, due to which the image formed on the retina of each eye of the same object happens to be slightly different. This difference between the two images is known as retinal disparity. Next binocular cue that we are going to study is, this is again a slide of retinal disparity. Binocular cues that we are going to study is the cue of convergence. Now, what is meant by convergence? Convergence, it happens that when we see a nearby object, our eyes happen to converge because we are moving the eyes inwards when we are viewing a nearby object. But as the object moves away, the eyes, they keep the degree of convergence, it decreases. So you can experience this convergence if you hold a finger in front of your nose and you can bring it closer to your eyes. The more your eyes turn inwards, that means the nearer the object is coming towards you. So here we have the description of convergence. And the last one is accommodation. It refers to the process by which we focus the image on the retina with the help of ciliary muscles. The ciliary muscles, they change their thickness of the lens of the eye because we have, like, for example, if the object gets away, all right, the muscle becomes relaxed. But if the object is nearer, the muscle contracts and the thickness of the lens increases. The signal about the degree of contraction of the muscle is then sent to the brain that provides the cue for the distance. So with this, we come to an end to the monocular and binocular cues. Thank you and have a good day.